Jason Johnson, I think the dye running down Rudy's face made it difficult to take him seriously. But you've got Steve Bannon, who's been indicted, Rudy Giuliani, who's reported by the Washington Post to have been the target of a Russian disinformation campaign, and has plenty of rumors swirling around him about criminal investigations, and Donald Trump, who's already been named individual #1 in an investigation of the Southern District of New York. You can imagine between the three of them Googling, what does a presidential pardon get you? But the three men, despite being lowlifes, all three of them, have done, I think, irreparable harm to the democracy and to the beginning, at least, of Joe Biden's presidency. How does Joe Biden get that back?
Joe Biden is going to have to do something that we probably haven't seen a president do since maybe the 1920s, after Teapot Dome scandals and all sorts of issues like that. He, in addition to juggling COVID and figuring out the economy, is going to have to push for a wholesale constitutional structural reform in the United States of America. This may be a bigger task than he is up for. This may be a bigger task than he expected. But, Nicole, I have been saying this all throughout this campaign. Donald Trump showed America and the world that our Constitution is not worth the paper it's written on. It really is only a gentleman's agreement between really, really rich gentlemen. And if those gentlemen decide that they're going to be rogues and they're going to be bandits, then none of this stuff counts. We are hanging by a thread. Now, that thread happens to be a lot of people who've decided, look, I'm just going to follow the facts. I'm going to follow the rules. It seems pretty obvious that this guy won. But that's not a safe way to keep your democracy functioning. In fact, these court rulings, to me, don't say that the guardrails are working. It means that we are pushing the envelope of how this place functions. A couple of more people here, a few scared legislators there, a couple of judges who don't care about their reputations or having a bad name in history, and you could see a state flip. If you didn't have Democratic governors coming in and passing laws to say, hey, you can't have faithless electors, this thing could be done. The only reason that we can have discussions about Joe Biden right now is because the autocrat in the office was too incompetent to pull off this coup. So Joe Biden needs to look through the Constitution and voting laws and push for structural changes that will prevent things like this from happening again. We can't have these kinds of delays when a country is at risk.
Listen, I'm old enough to remember that the excuse that Republican senators like Lamar Alexander gave for not aligning themselves with the one Republican senator who did vote with what he recognized was an abuse of power, Mitt Romney, was that, oh, there's an election coming, they'll deal with it. So said election has come, and they won't even recognize it. I mean, what do you think the long-term damage is of all these elected Republican officials refusing to recognize the result of an election in their own country?
Nicole, the damage is on the rest of us, because this election, remember, was an excuse for anything, right? At first, it was the election is the reason that Merrick Garland couldn't be seated, but that didn't matter for Amy Coney Barrett. Then it was like, well, we don't need to impeach him because we've got an election, but now you don't want to believe the election. The core of this, which is why this is dangerous, which is why this will extend beyond Donald Trump being in office, is because you have a large group of Republicans. This really actually, I think this goes back to Gingrich in the 90s. You have a large group of Republicans who at their core do not believe that Democrats can legitimately lead the country. Period. It doesn't matter what the math is. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. It doesn't matter if that person is black or biracial or Joe Biden or Bill Clinton. They don't think Democrats can morally run the country. And therefore, any election that elects anybody who's not a Democrat, they don't think is right. So the problem that we're going to have going forward, Nicole, which is sort of what I mentioned before, is in the same way that Joe Biden is going to have to say, all right, look, can we fix this election rule? Can we fix this loophole? Can we fix this? You're going to have Republicans at state legislatures. We saw what happened in North Carolina. We saw what happened in Michigan. We've seen what's happened in Wisconsin. We're going to see Republican legislators go to those same rule books and try to find ways that they can undermine democracy. They will try and allow faithless electors to operate. They will try and find more obscure rules so that we don't have to listen to the Electoral College. Unless there's leadership from President-elect Joe Biden to say, hey, look, we got to look at this Electoral College. We have to look at the gap of time. We have to make some of these things not tradition, but laws about the handing over of information. We will see this forevermore. This generation of Trumpists are not going to disappear. And whether Trump runs again or one of his kids, this attitude that democracy should only be in the hands of this family and this party is going to continue unless Democrats fight it tooth and nail.